Yes, it is. 2025 has been the worst year for Dead by Daylight in my opinion, and I will explain why. I know there are other bad years, especially as far as the game's health goes. There have been some years where the game barely runs, but to me, rating a whole year for Dead by Daylight really involves a lot of different factors and not just how the game is running. I think the matter of the relationship between the devs and the community is also very, very important. And just to be clear, this is all from the player's perspective. I'm sure behavior made a shit ton of money this year with all the licenses and new players. I'm sure money is not a problem, but I'm really talking about our experience, the players. First things first, I think this is very important to mention. I'm sure we're all thinking it, but it is really, truly unbelievable how behavior keeps messing up over and over. I remember the beginning of this whole thing, the quality of life promises for the year. I mean, that's what started it all pretty much. I mean, that was the first big false promise, probably the biggest one. And if you've watched my videos this year, you would know this is probably the thing I'm most disappointed about. I was actually looking forward to this a lot. I'm one of those idiot moron goobers that actually had faith and behavior to deliver on this. I started watching a creator called Scott Jund this year, and it was my first time watching his videos. I had known about him for quite a bit in the DBD space, but I never watched his videos, and I gotta say he's a really funny guy. I've heard him talk about the quality of life stuff, and he doesn't sound that bothered by it ending up the way it has, and I understand that's because he never got his hopes up in the first place, and I do feel dumb for believing in it, but I also had never seen behavior announce something like that, so I was very excited because it was something I'd wanted for a long time to happen, and I saw a lot of people wanting the same thing, and I feel like we all sensed that it was a big year for DBD, right? We already knew FNAF was coming out in the summer, which was going to be possibly the biggest chapter they ever had, so we knew it was a big year going into it, and when they promised something like that, I just kind of assumed, this is part of that big year. You know, they're a larger company now, they've got more money, I assume more resources, right? That makes sense. So I just thought it was something that was actually possible now for them to really go in there and fix some deep-rooted issues. But unfortunately, Dead by Daylight's foundation really is made of spaghetti code. That is no joke. So with that out of the way, the year starts, and we still believe, well, at least, you know, some of us, including myself, we believe that the game is going to get better, right? Quality of life, woohoo, you know, this is going to be great. And things were going pretty smoothly. We got the FNAF chapter, which was absolutely sick. You know, I think the map was underwhelming, but I'm pretty happy with how Springtrap turned out. I think he looks cool. He is a pretty strong killer. The skins look great as always. The lobby was hype. It was a great time for DBD, it seemed. The player base hit a new peak. You know, tons of new players coming in. It seemed pretty cool. Don't get me wrong, there were problems since the year started, but to me, they were like the usual DBD things, very minor, you know, passable stuff that you kind of expect after playing the game for a while. But there were some indicators that the devs didn't really know what to do in terms of balancing for this year, clearly. But I think the first most alarming thing, honestly, was the clown buff. I really enjoyed making that video, the clown speed hacks one, because it really was so ridiculously fun and stupid. I think it's definitely in the top 10 as one of my best videos. But yeah, I think we were all very surprised by that. It seemed very unnecessary to buff clown in that way. I know they were trying to make it so that people would actually use the yellow bottles a bit as well as the purple ones, but as usual, they just went way overboard. And that really is a recurring pattern for the whole year. They were just always going overboard with the changes, whether it was the values or just crazy ideas to begin with. I'll use this topic to segue into anti-tunneling, anti-slugging, anti-camp. You remember that stuff? All that stuff in the PTB that they spent months testing, hearing feedback, whatever, you know, most of it was overboard. The values, again, stuff was just too much, you know, too little. The ideas were not completely realistic, and recently they scrapped it, and I'm sure they'll come back to it at some point, but all that time was, in my opinion, pretty much wasted. Now, don't forget, quality of life is still a thing that was promised. At this point, you know, we're still waiting for it, some significant quality of life stuff. So what do we get? Well, the good news is that even though we scrapped the entirety of the PTB stuff, we are bringing over the survivor anti-camp meter into the game so that survivors can see it too. And yes, that is a quality of life change, very welcomed by me and most people, I would imagine. I like the change, it's very important. I think we should have had it a long time ago, so that's a good thing. But what else is there? Well, there's also MMR changes, P100 rewards, and numerous other things that have not been really addressed at all this year, and they might be addressed in early 2026, but honestly, I kind of doubt it right now. Everything is being very delayed. And on the topic of delaying things, Vecna 2, Stranger Things Chapter 2, everything like that, that was supposed to come out in November, I believe. And then they decided that since we're doing quality of life, we have a valid reason to delay it until January of next year. And I was perfectly fine with that. You know, I was like, we get chapters plenty, let's, put the pause on that and fix the game first. Well, now I just feel bad because that hasn't happened. November's gone by, and now we have to wait for the chapter in January instead, when there was no changes to even warrant that delay. I can only imagine how mad those people are that didn't really care about the quality of life stuff, because the quality of life stuff was promised, didn't come through, and then the chapter that they were really waiting for gets delayed for no reason. But to summarize what I said so far, I really just don't think I've ever seen behavior take L's this big so many times in 1 year. The game is not in a good state. It does not run well, servers crash constantly, I get frame drops, and I will say the game's been way worse in the past, so this is really nothing in comparison. But when the game is in that state, when you have so many new players coming in, way more than usual, it's just a terrible combination. I think a lot of it has to do with faith as well between the players and behavior as a company. When I was playing DBD in 2017, it really was just considered a party game. It wasn't that deep. The hitboxes weren't even close to being accurate. Everything was shit, and it was fun. It was just like fun bad, But anyways, one day I was just playing DBD, and I just sat there and I started to realize just how far the game has come, how much work they've put in to fix those hitboxes and improve animations and improve maps and make the game look a lot less bad. I will say I prefer a lot of the old maps actually over the new ones, but regardless, they really put a lot of work in to make the game look a lot more polished. I don't know why it feels like we're going in reverse. The company is getting more money, it's getting bigger, more resources, and the game is getting worse, and it seems like they're getting greedier, to be honest. The Rift Pass having less content in it, but the same price tag, and the new Christmas advent calendar thing, I didn't even realize how bad that is until I saw Spook and Juke's video on it. I really appreciate him putting that video out because I honestly had no idea, and that shit is criminal. I think it's very obvious that they don't want to give us stuff that lets you buy skins without having to open your wallet. I don't want to come across as overly negative, but I would say I'm just being realistic, to be honest. I mean, there's been bad years for DBD, very bad years. I remember when Twins came out, for example. That was one of the worst states I've ever seen the game in. It was one of the last times I ever took a huge break from DBD because of how bad the game was running and how bad the Twins were. I mean, Victor was upside down, under the map, in a different dimension, fucking everywhere. I know it's early December and they basically have another month to do stuff, but I just don't think there's anything planned. I think they've got maybe another bug fix or two left. They've got the Christmas event, which is already planned, and it's gonna be the same as last year, so I don't see any change, so I don't see any point of waiting to make this video. I think it's safe to say now that 2025 is just a bad year for DBD, and there is no coming back from that. The least they could have done is try to end the year on a high note and give us a reasonable amount of shards compared to previous years for the Christmas event, which they're not doing. While people are definitely going to argue over what year was the worst for DBD, I would say without a doubt that this was the worst year for relations between the players and the dev team. And really, they do it to themselves a lot of the time. They make these changes that nobody asked for, and if they don't work out, then it's even worse because nobody asked for it in the first place. But yeah, those are the reasons I think 2025 is the worst year for DBD so far. I hope it doesn't keep getting worse. I don't think it can be worse than this year. I think truly this year was a disaster. Funnily enough, I didn't even think this was the worst year at first. But then I thought about it, and then I thought about it again, and then I was like, yeah, overall this is pretty bad. There have been years where the game ran worse, sure, worse balancing, worse mechanics, whatever. But then I realized how much faith I lost in behavior this year alone, and I think it completely outweighs any other year in that regard. But yeah, that's about it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget the sub goal is 10,000 by the end of the year, so I'm really trying to hit that. And yeah, have a great night.
We gon' be alright, we gon' be okay.